Okay, welcome everyone. This is the September meeting for the assessment coordinators at each building. The purpose of this meeting is to kind of give you a sense of where things are going, to allow you to ask some questions, and if we were in person, you'd be able to get a chance to meet your fellow assessment coordinators, so that if you do have questions, we have quite a mix of people who have been coordinators for some time, and several people have never done this. So please don't hesitate to reach out to anyone in the group, or Sarah or myself. So I'm going to begin with the PowerPoint, and we're going to present that. So we'll do this about once a month, and as you can see, Sarah and I and David are all part of a new department in central office called Department of Assessment and Learning Supports. So we do a couple things. First of all, the assessment that Sarah and I are used to doing, but also really focusing on that next step is, once you have the data, how are you going to use that to really drive classroom instruction? We're new at this, so it may take a little bit of time, but that's what our focus is, and that's where we're going with this. So just wanted to let you know. So let's get started. So I want to, first of all, we'll go over the agenda for today. I know that there are some of you who are here for PALs, and that's the only reason. So if you are, that's going to be up first, and we'll be taking a little bit of time on that. And then once it's done, you're more than welcome to say goodbye and finish up your day elsewhere. Those of you who are in here for the long haul, all the way through AAPPL, we'll try and get this done with plenty of time, so that you'll be out of here early. Again, we will always be available for questions. So we found that over time, we always work better when we work together. People have great questions. Sarah and I sometimes can't answer them, but together we work through and find solutions. So not only ask questions of us, of David Goss, of anyone in the team, in the department, but also of each other. So if there are times in which there are, you're more than a couple of you are struggling with something, we'll try and share information. And if you have a solution, which we also lean on several of you, when you come up with solutions, to share those. I'm going to show you in just a moment some resource for support. And then in the agenda today, if you don't have that handy, it's in the invite, but there is also a quick survey. It's only a few questions about data use. We wanted to spend time, again, introducing our new department, but knowing that we've got a lot of material to cover today, and that instead of keeping you here extra long, we thought, well, maybe let's find out what kind of support around data use it is that you need. So if you have an opportunity in the next day or so, if you could please fill that survey out, then it would help us in providing more support for you. So I am going to take a break from this right now, and I'm going to jump to the website. I want to make sure I'm sharing this with everyone. Okay. This is the new website, and it is a work in progress. As I'm sure all of you are aware, the website had a changeover this summer, and it's going to be really good, but we have to get there. So the information for today's meeting can be found, this is the staff only side, under elementary assessments. And then I've got this broken down by grade level as well as by name, but underneath this is resources. So assessment coordinator resource page. Again, this is open to anyone who's a staff member. If you click on that, here is the agenda for today's meeting. Has many things linked in it, as well as it'll have a kind of summary notes that will be available. Over here is the slides. Slides are also linked in the agenda. And here is where I'm going to have the meeting recorded and posted. So if you need to come back and review just a section of it, that would be a really good thing for you to know. Also on this page are the district assessment windows. So you can click by month and move through that to see what's up. And finally, coming in the near future will be some planning calendar, so you can look a couple months ahead. And if there are any due dates for something that you'll need to at least share information with, that will be placed there. All right, so I'm going to go back to my presentation. Okay, let's begin with PALS. First of all, PALS is for 4K only. We did PALS through grade 2 a few years ago. We have since moved to a different instrument. It does fulfill the state requirement for reading readiness screener at grades 4K through 2. And so 4K, this is actually one of very few tools that actually will provide the appropriate kind of assessment or screener that we need. Unfortunately, this is available in English only at this point. We've had the opportunity to be part of pilot studies, but I've turned them down saying we've got enough work to do right now. We don't need to add additional work. So if you are interested in becoming part of the Spanish language 4K pilot study, please email me separately and we'll see what we can do to get you involved with that. Also, what we've done is we have a kind of a PALS pre-K training and administration guide. So it talks about all the different tasks that are involved in PALS at the 4K level and what steps you need to take to implement, including professional development for staff. Obviously, if you are an initial user, this is your first time through, whether you're regardless of you are a veteran educator or if you're brand new to the profession, you will need to do the professional development. Also, we're asking, because it's been a little while that we've actually done this, if you are continuing and you've done PALS before, PALS pre-K, please go through the professional development as a reminder and best practice. If you've changed grades, prior to this you taught kindergarten, but now you're teaching pre-K or 4K, please make sure that you do the professional development. The next step is you will have, once you've logged in to the website, you will have students in your roster. If they are not there, please let us know. We believe we have everybody in place, but you will need to validate the students, which means not praising them and validating their existence, but what you have to do is check in and say on screen, yes, this is a student of mine. The student is not or is an English learner. They do or do not have an IEP, and that they are ready to take the assessment in the near future. Print materials are from the website if you need some, and we'll show you in just a moment where that's at. Also, they could be found in the binder. There is a 4K binder that is available and should be one for every classroom. If your classroom has been expanded, you're a brand new 4K classroom, please let me know and we'll make sure that we get you one of these binders that has all the material in it. Once you've got the material, then you can go ahead and do the screening. Finally, reports to families. Unfortunately, PALS still has not reached the point where we at the district office can run a report and get all the student data in one click of a button. Instead, we would have to go into every single classroom and print out the reports for families. So we're asking that you do that. I know that's, or the classroom teacher. That is an added issue, especially when it comes time to family conferences. But we really don't have a way of getting information to the classroom teacher in a timely fashion in order for that to happen. There are instructions of how to print the reports on the webpage for PALS 4K. And finally, please keep in mind that this, unlike most of our tests these days, is not online for students. The login for staff is at www.palsk8.com. You will need to log in. If you don't have a login, please let us know. We'll make sure that you are set and ready for that. It is not available on ClassLink. So you actually have to go to the website and log in through that process. The materials, once you've logged in, are found in the materials choice on the left side of the menu. It's in the black section on the left. If you scroll down, you'd find something called materials. Click on that, and then you would see a choice of what level you want the materials for. As you can see in the bottom right of this particular slide, I've clicked on PALS Pre-K, and then you can see the different handouts for each of the times of year and any of the materials that you might need. So at this point, I'm going to stop and see if there are any of our friends who have questions about PALS 4K. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to jump back in and we'll continue moving on. Okay, next up, FastBridge. We've all been through FastBridge once, and I'm seeing okay, great question. I'm sorry, we're going to back up to PALS. Data for families is required. It's a legal requirement that we do that once a year. It may make sense, especially with 4K, that the fall is not our choice, but we need to make sure if that's the case that we certainly do the report in the spring, because we are required to send a report home to families. FastBridge does a couple of things. So first of all, it does fit the requirement for the state for a reading readiness screener, specifically for grades K through 2. It also is a progress monitoring tool, has that components, and we're using that through grade 12. We know that at this point in time, that flexibility is really important for all kinds of reasons and all kinds of things. FastBridge, we were able to last year to pivot. It was not fun to do it that way, but in order to get something available to staff and students in order to do progress monitoring, to meet the state requirements, et cetera. So it is flexible. It's available in both English and in Spanish. And the data is designed to support classroom instruction as well as tiered supports. Keep in mind that again is one of the things that David Goss can provide for you, is help in making sure that the data that you get from FastBridge is something that is useful to you and your teaching team. All right. So there are a lot of things that, again, that flexibility, with the flexibility of FastBridge comes some opportunities for, I'm just going to say, confusion. So let's see if we can clear some of that up. First of all, if you are right now, and I'm sure you're all involved in FastBridge at this point, we're right in the middle of the window. So this is nothing that should come as any kind of a surprise to you, but I want to make sure that we're clear on some things. First of all, which tests? If we are in person, these are the tests for the different grade levels in ELA or in early reading in Spanish. Now you'll see that it says in person or Zoom. I need to be really careful, and I want to be clear about the language that when I say in person or Zoom, suppose a student is in a classroom in attendance and then is home, whether it's a quarantine situation or they're sick or whatever, but they are still attending class via Zoom. FastBridge allows for each of these assessments to be given in that kind of a setting. So in person, when students are on a computer, or via Zoom, kind of monitored or proctored that way, or simply given, especially with the early reading, those can be given via Zoom. Now, if students are in the virtual, if families have chosen to go virtual for their children, Madison Virtual Elementary, the other side of it, the flexibility, then comes in with the virtual side, which is all computer-based at a distance. So you would not be doing this via Zoom unless you're troubleshooting, something along those lines. So you see the assessments that are aligned but different. So auto reading, we're back with that in K2. If we were to suddenly, as a district, go to close again because of the Delta variant, we would then be looking at using different assessments again, similar to last year. But at this point, only those families that are choosing virtual instruction will be getting these particular components. Hmong early reading, there is a screener available for Hmong DLI as well. Those of you who are into assessments at any level know how huge of a deal that is. Hmong assessments are not frequently found. The document that's detailed here is one. I'm going to jump out of this. I just want to stop presenting for a second. Sarah, good question. Since there's no DLI DBE offered in the virtual, so would kids who are doing virtual, yes, they will automatically do auto reading and A reading if they are not involved with DLI and DBE. So I hope that answers your question. All right, we're going to take a look at support for K5 FastBridge screeners. This particular document is the one that is linked in the PowerPoint, and it provides you with some background information, as well as a kind of a summary of what I just covered as you would see. So Sarah, I'm going to make sure I'm going to go back and here is what I need to make sure I'm clear about. So if we are virtual and I am a DLI Spanish student, I would be taking early reading in Spanish, kindergarten first. If I'm a virtual student in DLI DBE, I would be taking the CBM reading, and I will double check to ensure that if that's in English and or Spanish. Yes, Sarah, go ahead, jump on.
I just worry about that because if the kids who were in DLI chose to be in virtual, they're with English speaking teachers. So those teachers would not be able to give the early reading Spanish FastBridge to them.
Yes, and I would agree with that. And if that's the situation, if that's, we're talking about a teacher who is only monolingual, and that's the instruction, even though the student is DLI, I would say that it's only.
I think they had to give up their DLI status to be in the virtual school for this semester.
Okay, and because the whole virtual elementary was such a flip, this document may not be updated to show that. Okay, David, I'm wondering if you can help me in monitoring the chat. So if something comes up that I need to stop for, if you can just jump in and stop me. So, okay. So this document does provide some levels of structure, and I will be making sure that is up to date to reflect the exact thing that Sarah was making mention of. Okay, let's go back to this. So that is a document that's linked in your agenda. It's also linked here on the PowerPoint, and since it's a Google Doc, once I update that information, I will certainly be sharing it with you, and you'll have any changes. So FastBridge, talking about professional development. Just as we had last year, there are modules that are appropriate for each of the different content areas. If you've never done CBM reading in either Spanish or English, you do need to go through the modules, and there is a quiz and certification that if you are doing that, we will likely be following up if we're seeing that at the end of FastBridge you still haven't finished it. I know again that we're right in the middle of this, but please, it's really important, not because I want people to jump through hoops, but because of the fact that if we don't give this correctly, that really it draws into question the reliability and the validity of the data. And so if that's not a key point, then why would we even be doing this? So it ensures consistency, whether you're on the east side, the west side, wherever you're at, to be able to do that. Okay. Next, accommodations. FastBridge does not have a whole lot of accommodations, but there are some. So if you are doing a CBM reading, you can print out that. There's magnification, there are extra breaks, what they call proxy responses. So someone could help in adding the information that the student actually uses or comes up with the answers. All right, here's something that's really important. Student access, as you are well aware, students can access through ClassLink. Here is the important thing that I want you to know. Students will, once they're added to IC, the following day they will be imported, or that evening they will be imported into FastBridge. So they should be ready and able to assess the following day. Students who've moved out or changed schools and stayed within the district, that has to be done manually. So if you have a student who's recently moved, if I'm at Marquette and I have a student who's moved from Stevens, let me know, let Sarah know, so that we can actually physically move that student, because that will not be picked up by the upload nightly from IC. So send that to fast@madison.k12.wi.us. That goes to a team of people who will take that and address it. The staff access. Most teachers have access, and they're called classroom user permissions. And you can log in using your ClassLink tile. Just click on that. However, there are several different reasons why somebody might have a specialist permission. And yes, you can have both. It's almost like having two separate accounts. Specialist permission might be someone who is like a CC teacher. It might be someone who is a BRT, someone who needs access to multiple students, maybe in multiple grade levels within a building. So that has to happen through the FastBridge website. You log in there, and then your username will be your B number. So that's different than the classroom user. So don't try and look for multiple students in multiple grades by clicking on ClassLink. Okay, I'm going to stop there and see if there are any questions about FastBridge at this point.
Tim, there's a great question in the chat about Tracy said they had an assessment team do all the assessments for every grade. The team did all of their training. Can we wait to have the rest of the staff trained until we are closer to mid-year?
Yes, I mean, if you've got a team that's actually doing the assessment, that's the important point, is that who's doing the assessment those are the ones that are trained and gone through the professional development. And if you want to, as we get into the swing of things, everything kind of settles in, and then do with the rest of the staff, I'm okay with that. Okay, Holly, how can I help you?
So we have students that are in virtual learning that might be CC or identified ELL students, where services still need to be provided from our schools for those students. What's the best way that like the teachers here can access their data, because they're technically not rostered to us, so we can't see them in FastBridge?
I would want to know who the staff person is, and then I can give them, so the specialist access can provide access across schools. So for instance, you could have access to Elvium, for example, if you had a reason to do that. So if you have a student who is in Madison Virtual Elementary School and your staff needs to use that, we can give them access to both schools. Now, it does mean that they have access to all those students. I would make sure, yes, Bobby, I know you don't have that access. But if you want that, and there's a good, a valid reason for that, I don't want to give that to everyone, but again, it's possible.
So would it be better to say, like, give that access to me, and then the staff members come to me if they want to access that data and I can pull it for them?
I am comfortable with staff members doing that as long as they understand privacy. I mean,
Can
so
I
we
jump
got-
in on that too, Tim?
yes, yeah.
So I don't, in all honesty, I don't know exactly how EduClimber plays out in terms of like the virtual students right now, because I know that for most students, they have, a primary at virtual elementary, and then they have a secondary at their home school. I'm wondering whether you're able to see those students within EduClimber. That might be another path where you could see their data. I'm speaking out of ignorance. I don't know if this is possible. I'm just wondering if those permissions, if you have a secondary enrollment, if that comes in, just another possibility for those who might need that type of data.
Okay. I also wonder too, because I was going over data with some teams today, especially at the K1 level, that not all the subtests that they took on FastBridge show up in EduClimber.
Okay.
We saw a
Okay.
question about that earlier from Bobby as well, saying that EduClimber didn't seem to be showing all the data. I have put in a note to myself to check in with that team to make sure everything's pulling in accurately. And if you're seeing it consistently, another avenue would be just so that we get the question from enough spaces so that it can get resolved, is to put in a ticket with Incident IQ, because they'll see that occurring across buildings and might be able to diagnose what's happening. But I'm going to be putting that out there too, to see whether everything is pulling in accurately daily from FastBridge right now.
Thanks.
Okay. I am going to jump back. And again, if you have questions, we'll be hang around.
Wait, we got one more, Tim, just one more I want to sneak in.
Sure.
For students in quarantine, depending on how long they are out, can we finish testing outside of the window?
Good question. I would say it depends on how long. I mean, if we're, like 4 weeks from beginning to end, like they started the test and then they didn't finish it and they're out for several weeks, I would not, because then the data is not any good. If a student comes back midway between the windows, and if you feel it's important enough to do that, yes, you can go ahead and do that. We do have a longer window for the assessment. It's open than the one that I've given you. So for instance, the length of the fall window is 15 weeks. So I just want to let you know that doesn't mean that we have that time, because I'd rather get on with instruction. But that would still be considered to be in the fall. Otherwise, you'd just wait till the winter window. If you do have some specific cases like dates, please send me an email and we can follow up and have that conversation. Okay, let's move on to ANET. ANET opens up on the 11th of October, so it's coming up. Again, just a reminder about the purpose for ANET. ANET is an interim assessment, so it is looking, it's a benchmark saying, okay, how are we doing? How are we progressing? It is much more tightly aligned to standards than MAP was. And so it provides a different look, much more tightly aligned look to the standards than what we've had in the past. The data can be used to support in classroom instruction directly. It's also used to provide school-wide improvement support. So it's something that is really focused on what happens in the building, both the classroom and the building. It's much less about what happens at the district level. So the basic information we're going to talk just briefly about is that students have been rostered. They are in ANET. ANET, unfortunately, does not talk to IC every night. So as students move, we have to physically move and transfer them. That's not an easy process. It does require, especially if it's a new student, that we go through ANET. So if we're going to add a student, we send them we add the student ANET has to approve it, and then they will, then we have to manually set up the student. So it is a process that takes time. So if you have a student arrive on a Tuesday and Wednesday morning, that class is going to be assessing, please don't expect that they will be ready to go and they will be in the ANET assessment. We can't get it to move any faster.
And one quick side note on that is that I am making an attempt to keep up with new students daily. I have a IC poll that I do. So if they're new, just take a look and see if they're in place first. And then if you notice that they're not in place in ANET, you can email those names to me and I will, I can help facilitate the addition of them, and then ANET can process it to completion.
Thanks, Sarah. Keep in mind that all staff should be in place, but if, as we know, that you could be adding staff, staff get moved around, you have long-term subs, et cetera. Adding staff does happen at the building level. There is a process that the data and assessment coordinator would go through, and I've got some supports, some videos, et cetera, on how to do that. Please keep in mind that ANET does not run like other assessments in that mostly they bypass the district. And so it's a lot of conversation and a lot of tools set up for individual schools. But at the district level, we cannot do a whole lot. Because of that, the professional development that is involved is broken into chunks that we can share with you, and I'm going to in just a moment, but please keep in mind there's a lot of information. Sarah would certainly be one to tell you that if we were to share all the technical information with you, it's hundreds of pages per exam. I don't ever want to do that to you. So, but ANET doesn't provide any thing that we can actually do or very little that we can do. So we're trying to make it so that you don't have to dig through everything. But I'm going to show you some resources and we will go from there. So the school assessment coordinator, the data and assessment coordinator we're putting together, or excuse me, ANET has put together a rather large tool kit. And I want to share that with you right now. So you just see what it is, but this is designed for you, the person who is kind of leading the building with ANET. And let me see if I can find, here we go. Okay, so it looks like this. It begins with a table of contents and then useful documents. These links will take you in a lot of different directions. My intention, first of all, you have access to this and all the links that are within this. My intention is to break this into smaller bite-sized chunks so that, for instance, you can find information. If you've got a quick question, we'll be able to get to that a lot more quickly. So one of the things I want to point out is the videos for self-guided ANET product training. That's available. The online assessment virtual administration guide is here. All kinds of information. So this is like the big information trove that you have available to you. And it is pretty massive. So it's broken up into before, during, and after administration, some FAQs, et cetera. This is something that if you are experienced with ANET, you probably have no problems with this. And that if you're new to ANET completely, this might be pretty intimidating. So this is also something that Sarah, David, and I will be working with, and the rest of the team will be working with this to help you get answers to your questions. All right, so questions are always, okay, so what about staff? How do they know what to do? There are a series of videos that are anywhere from 1 to 5 minutes that will take a staff member into a particular portion that they might be interested in. I am really less worried about how this is administered because it's pretty automatic. The students will be able, and we'll get to how that happens. but more interested in on the usefulness of the data, because we've seen, and I know there's a few of you who can attest to this, it makes a difference if you use this data well. On this document that you see pictured on the right-hand side of this, which I have linked here as well, there are videos to preview for students. So there's a grade 2 through 5 video that's about 7 minutes that takes students through what to expect when they are in this particular assessment. And finally, there are a couple of people from the Achievement Network who are here supporting schools. So you have a data person, many of you do, but if you don't have that, or just because he's a really great guy, you might want to use David Goss as his expertise as well. So please keep in mind that ANET is really about getting this information back, its rich trove of information, and taking it to what can happen and change in the classroom. And we have several people who can help you with that particular process. The login. Here's where we get, it gets real. If you are a school coordinator, if you are the data and assessment coordinator in ANET, that's the term they use, you go to the ANET website, your username is the MMSD email address that belongs to you. Same thing is true with any staff member. They can also go in and get information as well, but it's the same process. All right. Here's something that is always a concern. How do students get logged in? Students are logged in, can log in through ClassLink, but this will not be ready until the first day of assessment. Here's why. For whatever reason, the Achievement Network has not gotten their software engineers to work with ClassLink, which is something we're working on behind the scenes. So we have to get an entire list of all students and manually upload that into ClassLink by MMSD staff. That takes some time. We'll do it. We'll make sure that you have it ready for you on day one. But again, if students are new, if students change buildings, remember I said that that's not an automatic thing as far as I see, we have to do that. Same thing is true here. We have to create a new tile for them, and I will have a process that they may have to go, the individual student new to the building may have to go in and put in their username and password initially. So for the very first time, then after that, it should work just fine. So it's not as smooth and without a chance for messing up as I'd like, but that's what we have to work with. And finally, accommodations. ANET only has one accommodation, and that is text-to-speech. It is by IEP only, and it's not, should not be used as a, you know, if it's used, text-to-speech could be considered to be used as a scaffold to support especially early readers. Here's why. If the test is about reading, and we know that text-to-speech actually will read every component of it. So the directions, it will read the reading passage, it will read the questions, it will read the answers if it's a multiple choice. So if you are assessing students' ability to read and comprehend, if you're taking away that reading part, what you're actually now assessing is their ability to listen and to process orally. So it completely changes the nature of the test. We will be sharing with you, Sarah will be sharing with you a list of the students who are listed as having the IEP accommodation for text-to-speech for ANET. You'll get an email with that in the not too distant future. We know that you can go in and make changes. I'm urging you not to do that simply because it, again, changes the nature, completely changes the nature of the test. If you want to have a conversation around that, I would be happy to have that, but that's, again, we're looking at how this is a powerful tool and it can be used to help students if we use it correctly. question about administering ANET to a newcomer. Newcomers are considered to be students who are recently arrived, so within the last 12 months. For the state assessments, they are DPI levels 1 or 2. At this point, the guidance that we've gotten is I'm just going to keep it at those levels, but I will double check that to make sure if I've got a staff member from multilingual service programs and services on, if you know of this being any different, please let me know, or some of our friends at CNI, but we're going to keep it at a level 2 and below. I think we had it at a level 3, but I'll double check on that. All right, again, I'm going to stop. We're almost done, and we've got a couple more assessments to go through. So if there are 1 or 2 questions right now about ANET, otherwise I'll hang out in a little while and we can also address those later. Okay, I'm going to keep moving. Thank you for your patience, and we're going to continue. I'm going to take a look at a new assessment that is going to be given to second graders that replaces the COGAT. One of the concerns about the COGAT was that it was had a cultural bias. And we know that every single assessment does have a bias. If you recall that the COGAT was if you ever saw that as particular assessment, it is an analogies assessment. It looks at problem solving, but it does use images of objects. So it could be a bird is to a tree, as a dog is to a blank, and then gives you a choice of multiple things. The Naglieri removes that, and it simply is geometric patterns and colors. And so it provides us a look at student problem solving abilities based not on their verbal abilities, but on what they can do. This is right now, this is grade 2 only, and it is computer based. Our staff who are involved, who are our advanced learning team, will be involved deeply with this. They most likely will be helping, if not leading the charge on giving this assessment at your buildings. Professional development. So one of the things that we've always asked principals, and some of you might wonder, why am I at this meeting even? Your principal has named you as the person to be our contact. For the AL team and the Naglieri, which replaces the COGAT, we may or may not have had principals that really understood that. And so you may be on this list and working with your AL team member to actually implement this. It is ClassLink friendly. So we've got second graders who will be taking this online, and it will just be a click on ClassLink when the time comes. So we will be providing professional development with the vendor to all the AL staff, and I will invite anyone else who is interested or who has been selected by the principal to lead this. More than just AL staff are welcome to that. I will get that information out within the next week as to when that is taking place. Naglieri will be taking place in November, I think the window is. Any quick questions about the Naglieri? Okay, I'm going to finish up today with the AAPPL. This is for DLI and DBE. We've done this many times before. It's for proficiency in languages other than English, so specifically Spanish in our case. For grades 3 through 5, we will do the speaking and listening component of the AAPPL, and it takes approximately 45 minutes to an hour. The assessment itself is computer-based. We need to make sure that the students have headsets, keeping in mind that there is a speaking portion, so that they will, again, need headsets, not just the headphones. They will have to have the microphone. Can they use their own earbuds? Absolutely. They can do that as long as the earbuds again are set up with a microphone so that they can do that. Not sure about ClassLink options, but we're working on that as well. The scoring typically is completed by the vendor in a couple of days, sometimes within hours. Fortunately, we are not using the writing component, which takes 2 to 3 weeks to score. So for grades 3 through 5, the turnaround should be pretty quick, and you should have information about where each and every student is scoring, where their proficiency is. We know that the situation with the pandemic is far, far from ideal for learning a second language and being immersed in that. This is going to be kind of a temperature check to see where we are at currently. We know things will get better, but just please keep in mind that this is an important piece that we do need to continue to monitor and continue to work for our students. So I'm going to stop again. We've got a couple sections. We've got Naglieri and we've got AAPPL. If there are any questions about that. Okay, then I'm going to finish up. So brief update. Just remember annually, if parents and families want to opt a child out of a test, it must be in writing. Please forward that documentation. If it's an email, just send us the email. Say, here's a family who chose to opt their student out. And if it's a handwritten note, if you could just scan it and send it our way, that would be great. Remember that opt-outs are good, not for a lifetime, but for a year, the academic year. I'm going to be working on information to families about what effect opting out has on all our schools. And it does make a difference in many ways. The data that we use, the data that we get, how our district is perceived, and there are a lot of things that go into that. I also understand completely families' choice, but I just wanted to remind you that it must be in writing. We are going to be offering this year Assessment and Learning Supports Department office hours. So every Monday and Wednesday, 2 to 3, the links are in the agenda. And finally, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact any of us. And those of you who are around, I will make sure that you have my phone number. I didn't want to give this out, but I'm going to stop the recording in just a minute so that I'm not sharing that with the world. So are there any questions for the good of the cause first, and then I'll stop the recording?